Hi, class. I hope you had a good Sunday and, a good weekend and that you're ready to hit the ground running in this next week. And, of course, on Monday we have our oral exam number 3. I want to send out a little video review specifically on the portion of the test that deals with harmonic listening, specifically harmonic rhythm and cadences from chapter 35. You'll remember when we looked at harmonic rhythm, it's the rate of change of the harmony, and cadential structures like half cadence, full cadence, authentic cadences, and so forth. Earlier in the unit, please read over chapter 35 for a more full, obviously, review of this specific unit. But how we're testing this chapter on the test is through pulse graphs, and you may remember those from way back into chapter 1. You can check that out way back in chapter 1, how to do those. I'm going to do a quick review right here, but on this test we're going to have to write out 2 levels of pulse to a musical example that we'll listen to. You won't have the score in front of you, it's just be a musical example that you listen to, and you have to write out 2 levels of pulse. And below here, we can see that that's exactly what they've done with Schubert's impromptu. We'll listen to it quickly, and you can see that they've essentially marked out the quarter note rhythm, dun, 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 and then also the measures, or the dotted quarter or dotted half note, dun, dun, dun. Right. So let's listen to this and see how they did that. Again, a pulse is essentially the kind of background rhythm, steady, consistent rhythm, like your metronome, for instance, that you can feel or tap with your foot, nod with your head. That is the pulse. Now you're going to have a primary pulse, and in this case, it's going to be the quarter note pulse. It's what the pulses you're going to probably feel most likely the strongest, and you'll probably be nodding your head to it. When you're taking the test, what I would do is, as you start to feel the pulse, start maybe tapping on the table. But maybe instead of tapping the pulse on the table, you can actually draw in these hash markings as you go. Check, 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 as you're beating the pulse. Maybe you can try that now. Maybe not even necessarily with pencil and paper yet, but pretend you're kind of marking out these hash markings, these pulse graph markings as we listen to this. Okay, so as you can hear, the harmony was changing on the beat, and then you could probably hear the primary pulse as these quarter notes, and then we've written out a secondary pulse, which is just the measures. They've also marked the harmonic changes here. You don't need to do that. I just want to illustrate and remind you what the pulse graph was. Let's turn to later in the chapter where we have Haydn Symphony number 100, movement 3 example. And this is very much like what you'll see on the test. This is a period structure, 2 phrases, antecedent and consequent phrases, with the antecedent ending on some kind of incomplete sound, like a half cadence or perhaps an incomplete authentic cadence, something that sounds incomplete. And then you'll have a second phrase, consequent, which is going to have shared material with antecedent, maybe even repeating the material directly, or as in this case with the Haydn, it's the rhythm that's the same, but the harmony has kind of changed. And we can see that it starts on 5 and ends on 1, closing out the structure, ending on a perfect authentic cadence, which is typical of this period structure. As we can see below here, we have about 4 levels of pulse. You only need 2. So you'd essentially just need this bottom line and this the next line up. These are the quarter notes, and I'll play it right now, and then so you can look at this as it's going along. Try to feel the quarter note rhythm and write out those hash lines, like this bottom hash line, on your first listen. Okay. So you could probably hear that primary pulse as the quarter note, and then you fill in a secondary pulse. Secondary pulse may be, in this case, they've written out as a dotted half note, but you could write it as eighth notes, right? Which would be subdividing these into halves, and have twice as many hash marks under here. Of course, that would be correct, but it'd be quite a bit more doing. But whatever you feel is what you should do, whatever you can latch onto. So on the test, you'll need those two levels of pulse, but you'll also need some of the information that you can see here. You will need to show that you can hear both the phrases in this period structure. And it's pretty obvious, I think, to the ear where these cadences happen. It will kind of lead you to it. Generally, it's 4 bars and then 4 bars, or 8 bars and 8 bars. It's not too complicated. And so you want to mark that with phrase markings. This phrase marking here shows the first phrase, and it ends on the 5-7 here. And you do represent that 5 chord underneath where it does happen. It's right on the downbeat of the 4th measure. So 1 then 5, you write that in as well. Then for the second phrase, you write in this phrase marking, and then as you can see, it's 5 here, and it ends on 1. Last thing you want to input that's not represented on the screen right now is you want to indicate if it's a half cadence or an authentic cadence. So here you would put HC, and then here you would put AC. All right, let's do a couple examples real quick, and then I'll show you the answers, and you should be ready to go. What I'll do is I'll give you 4 listens, which is what you'll have on the test. So I'm just going to play it, and then I'm going to just wait about 5 seconds, and I'll play the next one. You can pause it if you want some more time. Here's the first listen. Here's a second listen. Third listen. And fourth listen. Good. Now here are the answer. Here is the answer for that particular one. I felt it in this way. The primary pulse that I felt was bum, bum, ba, 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 bum, 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 so on and so forth, right? Maybe it's a quarter note, maybe it's eighth notes, but that's the pulse that I feel. And then I represented a secondary pulse by just halving that or augmenting that with feeling that if that was a quarter note and then primary, then it's a half note. And so this is the quarter note represented here, and then the half note. And then we also had a 1 chord beginning the phrase, a 5 chord ended the first phrase with a half cadence, and then a 1 chord, and then 1 chord ended the whole thing with the authentic cadence. The only thing missing here are the slurs from that time. Let's do one more. All right, here's our first listen. The second lesson. Here's the third listen. And here's the fourth listen. Great. Let's look at the answer for that. As you can see, it's in 3. Right, and then I put in the dotted half note as the measure secondary. We also start on 1 and then 5 half cadence in the first phrase, and 1 and then 1 authentic cadence in the second phrase. All we're missing is the slur markings. All right, hopefully that helps, and good luck. See you tomorrow.